Good morning, it's today again. Welcome back to Joseph's Reserves. I'm Joseph, and I store 20% of my income in the form of rare coins and precious metals. Today we're starting episode 1 of a 5-video series I'm calling The Foundations of Wealth. And today we're talking about what is money. Have you ever stopped to think about what money actually is? Not a dollar bill, not a credit card, or not the number in your bank account. Most people go their entire lives without ever asking this question. We work for it, we spend it, we save it, we invest it, but very few people stop to ask why one piece of paper can buy a week's worth of groceries while another piece of paper is just paper. And once you answer that question, you'll never look at gold, silver, or money the same way ever again. Congratulations to South Haven Coins and Bullion for getting to my comment section in my last video first. Thank you so much for the support. Y'all go down into the comments to find him and start a conversation. For a second, let's imagine we lived in a world before money existed. Let's say I raise chickens and you grow beans. If I want beans and you want chickens, then we have a perfect trade. We can just trade those directly after we figure out the answer to the question, how many beans for one chicken? But what if I wanted shoes instead? Now I have to find someone who not only has shoes, but wants chickens. And maybe they don't want chickens. Maybe they only want wheat. So now I have to find who has wheat that will trade for a chicken so that I could trade this wheat for some shoes. And you can see that it gets very complicated incredibly quickly. Economists call this the double coincidence of wants. Both people have to want what the other has to offer at the exact same time. And as societies grew, barter became less practical. People needed something everyone would accept, and that's where money comes in. Money itself isn't wealth. Money is simply a tool, a really good tool. It serves 3 primary purposes. First, it's a medium of exchange. Instead of trading chickens for beans, you can trade chickens for money, then money for beans. Second, it's a unit of account. Instead of memorizing exchange rates between chickens, wheat, cattle, sandals, olive oil, and hundreds of other goods, everything is measured in one common unit. Third, it's a store of value. If I sell my chickens today, but I don't need anything until next month, I can simply save the money instead of hoping my chickens stay alive until I need something. Those 3 characteristics changed civilization. But where does gold and silver fit in? This is the fascinating part. Governments didn't randomly just decide one day that gold and silver should be money. Across different civilizations, separated by geography and centuries, people repeatedly arrived at the same conclusion. Gold and silver simply worked better than almost anything else. If you think about it, you couldn't use grain because it spoils. You couldn't use cattle because they die or get sick and they're not divisible. You couldn't use iron very well because it's common and it rusts. Gold and silver are different. They're durable, portable, divisible, difficult to counterfeit, they're easily recognized, and they're scarce enough to hold value, but not so rare that no one can own them. Thousands of years later, these same properties still exist. One of my favorite examples of early money is actually the shekel. The shekel wasn't originally a coin, it was just a weight, specifically a weight of silver. Before coins were common, people could value things in terms of shekels of silver. Maybe a goat was worth 5 shekels and a piece of land worth 100 shekels. In this way, we could see that that piece of land was worth about 20 goats. Now, I don't know if that was exactly the exchange rate between those 2 items, but eventually standardized pieces of silver representing those weights became coins. Money evolved naturally because people needed a better way to exchange value. And here's the really difficult part for people today to really grasp their mind fully around, is that things had value before they had a price. The price isn't the value. I think this is where a lot of people get hung up. They think in dollars. We all do. If I asked how much a gold coin is worth, most people immediately today would say about $4,000. But that's only expressing its value in one unit of measure. Think about this. The exact same gold coin has a different price in British pounds, Mexican pesos, Canadian dollars, Australian dollars, Japanese yen. But did the gold change? No, only the unit of measurement changed. It's no different than measuring distance in inches versus centimeters. The object doesn't change, only the ruler does. The price tag alone doesn't show its true value. The price tag simply expresses that value using a specific unit of measurement. Then when you add the idea of inflation, you can see the real problem with using specific units of measurement. Here's an analogy that helped me understand this. Imagine if you had a ruler, and every year the inches on that ruler became a little bit shorter. Now imagine trying to measure, say, a child's height every birthday. Your child may appear to be growing faster than they actually are, not because they're changing more quickly, but because your ruler is shrinking. What used to only take up 10 inches of space, with your new shrunken inches now takes up 12 inches of space. And this is exactly what we see inflation doing to the money. The unit of measurement keeps changing. And if the unit changes, then the numbers attached to everything else have to change too. That's one reason prices tend to rise over long periods. Sometimes the item does become more valuable, but often the measuring stick is becoming less valuable. So now let's compare that to gold. One of the best examples I've heard is using housing. Before 1933, 1 ounce of gold was $20.66. We actually had a $20 coin that was just under 1 troy ounce. And in 1918, right after World War I, the average American home was about $2,000, meaning right about 100 ounces of gold. Today, over a century later, through 2 world wars, the Great Depression, the creation of the Federal Reserve, the end of the gold standard, and decades of inflation, we can still see that around 100 ounces of gold could still buy the average American home. The dollar price of that house went from roughly $2,000 to nearly $500,000. It's not that the actual house itself has become more useful or more valuable in today's society. If anything, you could argue that houses today are a lot easier and simpler to build. We could have a whole conversations about the material homes are built with, the value of the time and labor of everyone involved in building it, and how difficult homes used to be built about 100 years ago. But that's not really what this video is about. Instead, we're talking about how the number of dollars needed to buy both a house and gold increased as the purchasing power of the dollar has declined. Gold hasn't become widely more valuable, and neither have houses. But when we look at the house strictly in dollars, you can see that the dollar has changed. But when we measure it in gold, the purchasing power has remained surprisingly consistent over these long periods. And I don't mean to say that gold's value never fluctuates. It absolutely does. There are things to say about supply and demand. But over generations, gold has often served as a remarkably stable measuring stick for purchasing power. I'm not making this video to convince you to buy gold or silver. I'm making it because understanding money changes the way you look at everything else. Inflation, savings, investing, debt, even your paycheck. Because once you realize that price and value are not the same thing, you start asking much better questions. And those questions lead you to understand why gold and silver have been trusted as money for thousands of years. In the next video, we're going to answer another question that almost nobody asks. If gold and silver worked as money for thousands of years, then why did we stop using them? And the answer to that question explains almost everything about the financial system we live in today. So, I'll see you in the next one. If you like this video, make sure you go down and hit the thumbs up. Go into the comment section to start a conversation or continue one. Share the video with someone you think may enjoy it, and subscribe if you haven't already. To my long-term subscribers, thank you so much for your continual support. And make sure you go to josephsreserves.com to check out my merchandise, my coffee mugs, my zip-up bags, and the It's Today Again coffee. But most of all, thank you so much for watching, and just remember, every ounce adds up. So no matter how small, just keep stacking.